Night City, as we know it today, is a focal point of legends that ripple throughout the cyberpunk world. So much so that some of the most famous CEOs, solos, netrunners, and many more are referred to specifically as Night City legends. Well, today I will be presenting to you 7 immersive stories in an anthology style, ranging from the likes of Morgan Blackhand's Recruitment to Militech, to even the day Emil Lazarus decided the US military could no longer be trusted. This is currently planned to be a series, so to kick it off, I've selected some of my favorite events leading up to the DataKrash in the Cyberpunk sourcebooks, all of which are canon to 2077. I will provide some context on screen before each story so no one is left in the dark. I would also like to preface that many of these stories are not one-to-one tellings from the sourcebook. Segments like the Lazarus Situation are read straight from the books, while Morgan Blackhand's Recruitment reformats canon information into a short story. I hope you enjoy either way. Without any further delay, let's begin. The year is 2003. In the dead center of the Second South American conflict of North Venezuela, sprinted a U.S. Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel by the name of Emil Lazarus. This was, however, not a day of conditioning and leisure waiting for his next orders. He was in the thick of not only tropical mud, but a war zone that rained mortar shells onto his position, casting shrapnel with every explosion. The air was opaque with rain, making it difficult for Emil to navigate his only chance at survival. What mattered most was he could now make out the shape of a sandbag entrance directly in front of him. He dove behind cover, into the safety of a bunker held by his allies, just barely avoiding the ensuing hail of small arms fire that erupted from the tree line. Seconds later, his own troops began answering in kind from the bunker. What he now found himself in was an advanced base he had dropped in only a week before, along with a company of airborne troops, to reinforce and take command of the base and its depleted battalion. He was told that amphibious forces landing at Ports de la Cruz would reach the base within days and secure the area. In the meantime, air support was to be available on demand. The week had passed, yet the promised amphibious troops had bogged down in heavy fighting in Barcelona City. His advanced base was alone and under vicious attack. He had no other choice. Emil Lazarus grabbed the nearest Cellucom net phone receiver from a young, wide-eyed operator. He punched up the brigade air support net and spoke in code. 4-com Frisbee. 4-com Frisbee. This is Grasshopper. Over. In reply, a 5-second eternity of nothing but satellite hiss. Lazarus yelled into the handset over and over, yet only received silence. He swore and reached for his next best option, a ComNet selector, meaning to break orders and switch directly over to the Naval Air ComNet. In this moment, his hand was jolted by a crackling voice. There was a flurry of distortion as the military ComNet computers struggled to overcome the satellite jamming signal.
Say again, Grasshopper. This is Frisbee. Do you copy?
This was the reply he had been waiting for. Relief swept through Lazarus as he got his message in order. Yes, this is Grasshopper. I copy. It's about time. I need air support. We got at least 5 companies of Venezuelan regulars in the tree line off our south perimeter, requesting air AP delivery ASAP. Grid coordinates as follows.
Grasshopper, be advised.
Repeat. Grid coordinates as follows. 6-3 marks.
Grasshopper.
The sharp tone of the voice had brought Lazarus up short. The voice continued.
Be advised. No air support is available at this time.
Lazarus jerked the handset away from his ear and stared at it. It must be a wrong number. Somehow, some way he had connected to a separate line, or had been intercepted. These thoughts did little to quell the dread that was already swelling within him. Say again, Frisbee?
I repeat, no air support available. All naval aircraft were ordered to the Paraguana Peninsula.
There was a brief moment of silence, where even the sounds of battle and his own adrenaline-spiked heartbeat seemed to fade. All of it only worked to amplify his explosion of anger. What the hell do you mean no support? I was guaranteed naval air on demand when we dropped in this hellhole. We're in imminent danger of being wiped out.
I repeat, no air support.
Divert some of the airplanes.
Apologies, Grasshopper. No immediate air support is available. Be advised, complete air evacuation from your position will begin in 8 hours. Sit tight till then. Frisbee out.
The receiver clicked dead, seeming to signify the death of trust in his own country. No air support. Evac in 8 hours? Had their whole landing been a diversion? The only thing the AVs and Ospreys could be carrying out of this base were body bags. All he could do was keep as many of his men alive as possible. So, he unslung the unreliable government-issued FN-SAF assault rifle and strode out of the bunker. 8 hours later, Lieutenant Colonel Emil Lazarus and 37 other survivors were airlifted out. 512 dead were left behind. The Militech recruiter had sat down for a drink. It wasn't common he ended up in a place like this, but that's what the day entailed. Just a stop along the way. The bar wasn't anything special, just as worn down and filled with gonks as any other. Yet, he was still able to pick up on a shift of atmosphere just across from his seating. His gaze locked onto a common sight. A stereotypical booster gang and their leader. A couple of chromed up lunatics that edge cyberpsychosis on a daily basis. While they might have been more common in the combat zone of New York, it didn't make them any more rare. The target of their violence wasn't a surprise either. A grizzly man, let's say 40s, salt and peppered hair, and a coat that popped close to his face. The only visible chrome of his being an anodized black chrome arm that peeked out from underneath. Curious enough, it seemed to be government issued. It was typical that gang members would make him out to be an easy target, and from the perspective of the Militech recruiter, he expected the worst outcome. It was clear the local leader took a strong disliking to the man. It wasn't long before he lunged with bloodlust. The man reacted, but wasn't out of fear or surprise. It was fluid, like watching a calm river during a stroll in nature. Not that there was any around here. His body shifted just enough to dodge the attack and launch his black cyber arm crashing into the jaw of the leader. Before the gonk could even stumble back, he was dispatched with such finesse that even the recruiter was in shock. The encounter was short, as he made quick work of the few that tried their luck. Those left that weren't beaten and bruised scurried away from their now dead boss and collapsed chooms. The victor couldn't even be bothered. He just went back to his drink. The recruiter looked at him like a get Eddie's quick scheme. He went up to the man and dropped him his business card, making him an offer he absolutely couldn't refuse. And the man, Morgan Blackhand, of course accepted. Holt Cunningham plunged headfirst into the net, her mind a symphony of code and energy. The Arasaka mainframe wrapped around her like a cage, held together by the watchful eyes of 3 Arasaka netrunners. Outside, her body lay motionless on a contour couch, its only sign of life being the steady hum of the cyber modem connecting her to this digital reality. But here, in cyberspace, she was alive. More than alive, she was a goddess of code, weaving her magic, drawing subroutines, and building something terrible. Soulkiller. The name echoed in her thoughts. A program she once built for creation, now perverted for destruction. Originally, it was meant to be a matrix capable of holding artificial personalities, a bridge between man and machine, a dream of immortality. Now, she was forced to rewrite it, give it mobility, a hunter in the net. It disgusted her, but the challenge of creating it, of giving it wings, still thrilled her. She couldn't help but marvel at the complexity, even if it twisted her soul to do so. Soulkiller was almost complete. A towering pillar of white fire spun in front of her, its form shimmering with a beauty that made her breath catch in her throat. It was alive in a way few things in cyberspace could be, and it spoke, its voice as clear as crystal, humming with deadly perfection. I am. Alt, resolute as ever, commanded, I am your controller. You follow my commands. As always, the construct responded without the slightest hint of doubt. A chill ran through her as she realized what she had done. She had control, she had power, but it was the choice to use it that chilled her the most. Suddenly, Alt felt her consciousness drift. She floated naked through the stars of the net, surrounded by the swirling code of Soulkiller. She could feel its hunger, its thirst for minds. With just a flicker of thought, she unleashed it on the 3 Arasaka Netrunners watching her every move. In an instant, their minds were gone, sucked into the black void of the construct. Their bodies, mere shells, slumped over their consoles. She was free. From one of their minds, Alt extracted the access code she needed, her fingers moving through the interface with the grace of a concert pianist. She downloaded data from the inner depths of a mainframe, wiping clean $20 million from Arasaka's accounts and depositing them under her name. She even forged Toshiro's signature with a flourish, enjoying the small victory. Through the room's security cameras, she watched her own body lying across the console. Akira, one of Toshiro's loyalists, approached her, but Alt wasn't having it. A quick trigger of the room's lasers and Akira was cut in two, his body hitting the floor with a steaming thud. Toshiro, witnessing the carnage, sneered in false politeness. Congratulations, Miss Cunningham. It seems you found a way to escape your demise. Through the interface, Alt's voice hissed in his ear. You Zaibatsu bastard, you'll sit still, or your laser meet. Unbeknownst to either, the room exploded with a thunderous roar. As the door burst open, 3 figures stormed into the chaos. Johnny Silverhand, Rogue, and Thompson. Johnny rushed to Alt's still body, immediately unplugging her from the net, thereby unknowingly severing her connection to her own body. He knelt beside her, trembling as he cradled her in his arms. But Alt, she wasn't there. Not anymore. Thompson strode across the room, his green cyber optic blinking as he transmitted live footage. What do we have here, Toshiro? Kidnapping? Maybe murder? You're going away for a long time. But Johnny wasn't listening. His white, featureless eyes stared at Alt's lifeless form. Somewhere, deep in the net, a disembodied Alt screamed for him, trapped behind the crystal walls of her digital prison. But Johnny couldn't hear her. He was already lost, just like her. With a cold detachment, Johnny raised his pistol, fighting the cyber psychosis that now overwhelmed it. The Malorian's red pinpoint landing squarely on Toshiro's forehead. Bang, he whispered, and the gun followed. Johnny gathered Alt's still warm body in his arms and walked away from the wreckage, leaving behind the man who had taken everything from him. Behind the screens, Alt's voice faded into the endless expanse of cyberspace, her ghost forever trapped in the machine. Arabella was only 13, but she had already seen more of the net than most grown runners would in their lifetimes. Late one night, sitting in her room with the glow of her newly stolen Paraline 5750A cyber deck casting shadows on the wall, she heard her father muttering drunkenly from the living room. He slurred something about Bartmoss, a name she had heard whispered in hushed tones in Netrunner circles. Rache Bartmoss was a living legend, a ghost who could tear apart corporate systems and vanish before they even knew what hit them. Yet he always wanted credit for the outrageous crimes he'd commit. From what her father said, his sin, the state identification number that held a person's life in the system, had been wiped. Her curiosity piqued. Her father's drunken ramblings were usually useless, but this time, she couldn't ignore it. Arabella made up her mind. She had to find Bartmoss. Tracking him down wasn't easy. Rache Bartmoss didn't leave much of a trail. Not in the real world, and certainly not in the net. But Arabella was tenacious, and after days of relentlessly searching, she finally tracked him down. Or did he let her? Despite this accomplishment, she was left surprised. He was 17, pale skin, almost sickly, and but for the acne, he looked more like 25. But what caught her attention most were his eyes, sharp, calculating, and aware of everything around him. "You found me," Bartmoss said without looking up from his deck. His voice was calm, even impressed. I came to warn you," Spider blurted out, feeling a bit foolish now that she was standing in front of him. "My dad, he works for some corp, and he said they killed your Sin." Bartmoss let out a low chuckle, finally turning to look at her, and he studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "I've heard about you on the net. The girl who hacked Zeta Tech just to get a better deck? Not bad for a 13-year-old. Her pulse quickened, never having been on the opposite end of this sort of conversation. "I've been running since I was 9. "Running? You've been playing around, for the most part." Bartmoss leaned back in his chair, a sly smile crossing his lips, one that couldn't help but unsettle Spider. "You really want to run a net? Stick around. I'll show you how it's done." It had only taken this short encounter for her to realize that Rache's skills were of a different order of magnitude. He had a long career ahead of him, because even when he lost his reflexes, his experience and his uncanny sixth sense would keep him on edge. Bartmoss took her under his wing, showing her the depths of the net she had only dreamed of. They spent hours tearing through corporate firewalls, evading Netwatch, and laughing as they wreaked havoc on systems that seemed impenetrable to others. Spider wasn't just a student. She was a prodigy, and Bartmoss recognized her potential. She wasn't afraid to deep dive into the unknown, to push past limits, to experiment with every interface and program they could get their hands on. They ran the net not for profit, but the thrill of it. And Spider learned quickly that with Bartmoss, nothing was ever off limits. He was reckless, brilliant, and insane. But more than anything, he was a force that no one, corporation or government, could ever control. As time went on, Spider began to realize that Bartmoss didn't just want to run the net. He wanted to reshape it. He was a man with a vision, and he saw something in her that could help him make it a reality. "You know, Spider," he said one night as they sat in a quiet corner of cyberspace, "you're one of the few people I trust out there. Don't ever let them tie you down." The group of Arasaka mercenaries had finally reached their target location. Fighting through a 7-story Connapt filled with lethal devices and robots had already reduced it to the hallways of hell. A hallway of hell that, oddly enough, had the body of Marge Simpson lying in it, covered with fresh-baked pie. Yeah, long story. One complicated even further by the horde of corporate zombies that rushed past the room the moment they entered. The room was exactly what you would expect of a highly wanted Netrunner. The guy was holed up in a cramped space, one packed with gear, a generator, wires and cabling everywhere, a few personal robots scurrying around, and no furniture in the normal sense of the word. Before even taking in the surroundings to its fullest extent, several automated weapon systems began lining up. The mercenaries opened fire, stray bullets ricocheting across the room, grazing each combatant and dispatching the defenses, all the while making a mess of what was already a difficult to navigate room. The moment all the defenses were cleared, they got to work. There wasn't a moment to spare in their schedule. The Netrunner had to be found, and quick. With the help of the group techie, everything was narrowed down to a single fridge. Readying their weapons, the group opened the door. The interior was not separated into normal refrigerator and freezer segments. Rather, it was one compartment full of ice and wires, with a body lying within. The mercenaries hesitated to shoot, not because their orders were unclear by any means. It was fear. Fear of an inhumanely wide grin on their target's face, one of not only pain, but pleasure. It was this moment of hesitation that allowed their objective to be completed on its own. The iced body, still curled in the fetal position, slid out of the fridge onto the floor, completely devoid of life, yet maintaining that rictus grin. Suddenly, a set of red flags whip up next to the fridge and start waving maniacally. An old-fashioned bell by the door starts ringing loudly, and a red light flashes over a printer that's next to the bell. The printer spits out 3 pieces of paper as strains of Beethoven's Ode to Joy starts booming from the stereos throughout the con act. All the firing suddenly stops as confetti explodes from the ventilation ducts, and a small arachnoid robot drops from the ceiling, clutching a high-density data chip in its limbs. It says, "Have a cookie. You have 30 seconds before the grand finale." It was a warning to escape with their lives. A rare gesture in Night City, and an even creepier one from the legend Rache Bartmoss himself. A young netrunner in her late 20s, long braided red hair, and a short stature had just jacked into the net for some programming. In the middle of his session, she was interrupted by an annoying mail alert. It blocked her vision with a fat sausage bee and a virtual voice saying, "You've got mail. Oh god, oh god, oh god, it's coming. Now, yes." The message was from her close friend and colleague netrunner, Rache Bartmoss. He knew exactly how to peeve the woman. She hated it. The message contained was simple. It read, "Foxbat1, one of the many codes Rache and her had worked out to arrange meetings and chat rooms and the like. This particular code was unfamiliar and somewhat alarming in comparison to the rest. It had never been used before because it was the code, the holy mother of God, it's all happening now code. With how Rache's mind works, he hadn't even used this code when he got flatlined and confined to the stasis of the freezer unit. In response, Spider Murphy urgently rushed to this chat room, crashing in with all her icebreakers and killer utilities loaded. Demons flying point, the works. What she found was somewhat unsettling. Rache was just standing there, calm as could be. "Sweetheart, I'm so glad you could make it," he said. None of his standard psychosis even made a cameo in the timbre of his voice. Unlike the average person, being calm and perfectly normal created an eerie atmosphere around Rache. It was just too outside the norm. It was like he was suddenly Mrs. Claus or something. "Have I ever told you how much I love you? Come on, they just loaded this romantic little VR at the dunes. Let's go, just the 2 of us." "Okay," Spider responded nervously. Just hearing him talk like that tone, those words, soul-chilling. The 2 went somewhere in Asia, an undisclosed location, in the middle of net nowhere. Suddenly an icon appeared, a simple matte black ball. "Every year I come here, and every year I reset this." Then he looked at Spider, right in the eyes. She thought she could see a swelling of tears. "But I'm through, Arabella." A wry smile. "My cookie is goosed, I suppose I'd say. I didn't want to do this alone. Someone has to see it. I want you to be here." He paused, took a breath. "Well, here it goes." He looked at the ball. He waved his hand. A ping, and it changed to a globe. He shook his head. A whistle, and it's changed to a switch. And it squeaked into a big red button. No, that's not it either. Then there followed this flurry of noises and icons flashing by, an almost cartoon stream of images. A car, a bomb, a kid, a wallaby, a cream pie, it all went on, accompanied by a cacophony of grunts, pops, barks, you name it. This went on for 30 seconds. "Oh, frag it all," he said finally. Covering his eyes, he thrust his forefinger at the shifting icon. As it hit, the icon froze. His finger ended up sticking in the nostril of a clown's head. As it pushed in, there was a squawk. He turned and smiled, half relief, half psychosis. He pulled his finger from the happy clown's nose and whimpered. This was at least moderately familiar turf when it comes to Rache. "What have you done?" Spider inquired. Her deck began to crash as he answered, jamming the IG transform signal and trashing her tracer routine. "What have I done? Just wait, Spidey," he said with a demonic smile. "Wait, and you'll see. You'll see, you'll see, you'll see, you'll see, you'll see." The communication ended, and with it, the net as everyone knew it. And that is part 1 of my Cyberpunk 2077 short story collection. Now the source books are massive and the details are endless, so this video could have gone on much longer. Remember, this was more or less meant to be a preview of what's to come. Let's just say, there's enough to feel in over my head. Let me know if there are any stories you'd like to see in a future installment, as well as all your thoughts down below. I've tested the waters of short stories in past videos, but am always afraid to try my hand at creative writing, which is why some of these segments are from previous videos with refreshed editing. I know I've had a lot of breaks in my upload schedule, and I wish it wasn't the case. I have plenty of ideas and even completed scripts, so I genuinely hope to get them out to you as soon as possible. As always, a huge thanks to all the channel members up on screen. I appreciate all the support and am grateful for the opportunity to make content for you all. I have so much I want to do and share with every single one of you. I just wish I could be doing this every minute of the week. Well, maybe not every minute, but you get the point. So seriously, thank you to every single viewer, subscriber, and member. Make sure to have a great week, and I will see you later, chooms.